Hello, my name is Major Daniel Crumback. I am the Physiotherapy Regional Practice Leader for Western Canada. I'd like to thank you for your participation in the Quadrant-Based Injury Prevention Study. This study is part of my research looking at the use of clinical tests for the prediction of future low back pain in Canadian Armed Forces personnel. As part of this study, you'll be placed through 13 different stations, 19 different tests, with the goal of identifying which tests could predict that you are going to have future low back pain. We then can go back into those test series and devise a cluster of tests that we can then employ at each unit annually to determine who is at risk over the next year for developing a quadrant-based injury. I thank you once again for your participation, for it's only through your participation that you could make this study possible. The purpose of this video is to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of this test procedure. So you will be now introduced to each of the stations and the tests for each station as a means of introducing yourself to each of the exercises so they're not foreign each time that you arrive, and that will certainly improve our ability to move you through the stations more quickly and for you to understand the purpose of each of the testing procedures. Station 1, Upper Quadrant Wide Balance Test. This test tests your mobility and stability of the upper quadrant and core through the extremes of range. The participant starts with bare feet and places his right hand in the center of the stance plate with his thumb just behind and parallel to the red starting line, with the other hand on top of the reach indicator. While maintaining his right hand on the platform, he adopts a push-up position with his feet shoulder-width apart. He then pushes the reach indicator in the red target area as far as possible with the opposite hand out to the side, then under and across, and finally over and across without resting between directions. The reach hand must maintain contact with the reach indicator in the target area while it is in motion. They cannot shove the indicator, and they cannot use the reach indicator for stance support by placing their hand on top. You are allowed to bend your weight-bearing elbow, and you're allowed to twist your body as much as you wish. A failure on this would be if you do not return your hand to the start position under control, if you touch your hand down in between the reaches, if you flick the block out, or if your foot comes off the ground during the movement itself. Once you have pushed all the blocks out in each direction, the monitor will record your scores, and you will then repeat 2 more times where we will record your best score, and then you will use the opposite arm in the same 3 directions to record your opposite arm score. In order to improve efficiency, 3 practice taped stations will be set up just beside the actual wide balance kits. The expectation is participants will practice 3 times on the tape stations and then move forward to be assessed using the actual wide balance test kit. Station 2, Selective Functional Movement Assessment, Multi-Segmental Mobility. The purpose of this test is to assess lumbar mobility. This test consists of 3 different movements: flexion, extension, and multi-segmental rotation. For the multi-segmental flexion, the participant stands with the feet together, shoes off, and the toes pointing forward. He bends forward at the hips and spine and attempts to touch the ends of his fingers to the tips of his toes without bending his knees. An error would be having the knees bent and that would be corrected, and your score will be recorded. The next test is the multi-segmental extension. Standing erect with feet together, shoes off, and toes pointing forward, while maintaining his elbows extended, the participant raises his arms directly overhead until they are aligned with his ears. He then bends backward as far as possible, keeping his arms aligned. He's allowed to let his hips drift forward and his shoulders to move back. Then returns to the start position. The final test is multi-segmental rotation. The participant stands erect with the feet together, shoes off, and toes pointing forward. He then rotates his entire body as far as possible to the right while maintaining his foot position. You are allowed to do anything that you wish with your arms to maximize the movement, arms bent or extended. He then, of course, would repeat the movement to the left. And return to the start position. Station 3, modified Schober and upper limb length. The purpose of the modified Schober is to assess lumbar mobility into flexion and extension. And the purpose of the upper limb length measure is to get individual measure in comparison for the upper quadrant wide balance test. The participant starts with bare feet, feet together, and the monitor then marks the posterior superior iliac spines of the patient with a straight line across between them. The monitor then measures 15 centimeters above this line and places another mark. With these measures in place, the participant then bends forward, keeping his knees absolutely straight, and the monitor then measures the change in distance between the two marks on the back. Between the measurements, the participant returns to the start position, and 3 attempts are made. After the 3 attempts are made forward, then the participant places his hands on his hips and bends backwards as far as he can. And a measure of the change in the marks, the measurement of the marks is made. The participant returns to the start position between each attempt, and 3 attempts are made. The next step is the upper limb length. The right hand will be used, and the monitor will mark the C7 spinous process and then measure to the tip of the index finger of the right arm with the arm abducted to 90 degrees. And a recording of the measurement will be made. Station 4, lower quadrant wide balance test. The purpose of the wide balance test is to assess your mobility and stability of the lower quadrant and core through the extremes of range. Participant starts with bare feet and places his right foot in the center of the foot plate with his toes just behind the starting line. While maintaining the foot on the platform, he is to push the reach indicator in the red target area as far as possible anteriorly with the opposite leg. The reach foot must maintain contact with the reach indicator on the target area while it is in motion. So for example, you cannot flick the block, nor can you place your foot on top of the block in order to maintain balance and push. Your heel is allowed to lift off of the plate, and you can do whatever you wish with your hands to maintain balance. You must return to the starting position in between each of your attempts, and an error would be if you flicked or placed your foot on top of the block. Do not return to the starting position, or you accidentally touch your foot down in between your trials. Do not return the foot to the starting position under control after each attempt. After attempting 3 movements forward or anteriorly with the right foot, you will replace the right foot on the stance plate with your left leg, and you will attempt the same movement anteriorly 3 times using your left leg. After each attempt, your monitor will record your scores. You'll have an opportunity to rest in between while the scores are being recorded. The next, you will move your right foot back onto the stance plate, and you will move the block posterior medially as far as you can, again completing 3 attempts with the right foot, and then replacing the right foot with the left foot on the stance block and going anterior medially with the right leg. You will then replace the blocks, place your right foot on the stance plate, and you will now move posterior laterally. Again, 3 attempts will be made, and you'll be recorded in between each attempt. You will then replace your right foot with your left foot, moving posterior laterally. 3 attempts will be made. In order to improve efficiency, 3 practice YBT stations will be taped to the floor. Our expectation is that you will practice 3 trials of the 3 movements for each right and left leg prior to attempting your actual recording using a YBT balance kit. Station 5, double leg side plank bridge right. The purpose of the double leg side plank bridge right test is to assess the strength and endurance of your hip abductor muscles and your core strength. The participant adopts a side lying position in elbow prop. You will ensure that the left foot is placed in front of the right foot on the mat for support, and ensure that the toe of the rear foot is touching the heel of the front foot. Now lift your hips off the mat and maintain a straight line over the full length of your body, using your bottom elbow and both feet for support. The uninvolved arm should be placed on your left hip. You're to hold this position for as long as possible, as this is a time test up to 180 seconds. You will receive 2 corrections during the test. For example, if your lower leg touches the floor, you'll be told leg, or if you roll forward out of this position, you will be told trunk or rolling to make the correction. Otherwise, no encouragement to continue will be given. Station 6, ankle mobility. The purpose of this station is to measure ankle dorsiflexion. Before testing, the participant will complete 2 30-second calf stretches, bent knee calf stretches on each leg. Participant will then kneel on his left knee and place his right foot along the taped line in a split lunge position. The monitor will then mark 1 inch, the tibial tubercle, 1 inch distal to that point, and then using his smartphone, he will then place the top of the smartphone on the mark. The participant will then bring his knee forward as far as possible while maintaining his heel on the ground and maintaining alignment of the knee with the taped line on the floor. 3 attempts will be made with a rest in between, returning to the start position. An error would be if the knee moves inside the taped line. during the test, or if the heel lifts off the ground during the test. After 3 attempts are made, then the participant would switch legs and the opposite leg would be measured. Again, 3 measurements will be taken and the best score will be recorded. Station 7. Station 7 consists of 3 different tests, including the deep overhead squat, shoulder mobility, and shoulder impingement clearance. For the purpose of the deep overhead squat is to measure your mobility and stability in a functional movement of the squat. The participant starts with bare feet, feet shoulder width apart, toes facing directly to the front. A dowel will be placed on your head and your hands will be adjusted on the dowel with your elbows at a 90-degree angle. The participant will then press the dowel overhead with the shoulders flexed and abducted and the elbows fully extended. The participant will then descend slowly into a squat position as deeply as possible. Position should be assumed with the heels on the floor, head and chest facing forward, and the dowel maximally pressed overhead. And your knees should be kept aligned over your feet. In this case, the participant is unable to achieve the stated goal, so therefore we'll move backwards, placing the heels on the FMS block. Following all the same starting rules, he will then attempt to be able to do a full deep overhead squat using the block. Participant will be given 3 opportunities to achieve the stated goal, and on 2 of those occasions may receive feedback as to corrections. And a final score will be recorded. You will also be asked if you had pain during the movement. Station 7, shoulder mobility. The purpose of the shoulder mobility test is to assess shoulder mobility. To start, your monitor will measure from your distal palmar crease to the digits, your longest digit, and record that number. They'll be asked to turn your back to them, place the thumbs inside the fists of each hand, and then try and place your left hand behind your head and right hand up your back in one movement, attempting to touch your knuckles together. Your monitor will then measure the distance between the 2 closest points. You'll be given the opportunity to return to the start position and redo a total of 3 attempts. And of course, then you will do it with the opposite combination of right hand behind the head and left arm up the back. You are not allowed to wiggle to try and get them closer together. And you will also be asked if you had pain during any of the movements. Station 7, shoulder impingement clearance. Participant will stand with their feet together in bare feet and place the right hand onto the left shoulder. While maintaining the palm in full contact with the shoulder, participant will lift their elbow as high as possible. An error would be allowing the palm to move away from the shoulder. They, of course, will then recreate the test using left arm on right shoulder, and they will be asked whether they had pain during the movement. Station 8, inline lunge and hurdle step. The purpose of the inline lunge is to assess your mobility and stability of your lower quadrant and core. To start the test, you'll measure from your tibial tubercle to the ground in order to make this specific to you. In this particular case, he is 17. The participant will then be asked to place his left foot on the deck with his toe on the red line and his foot aligned directly towards the front in bare feet. He will then place the heel of the opposite leg forward onto the 17, which was the score of his distance that we had recorded earlier. While maintaining his rear foot and forefoot directly forward, he will then place the stick behind his head. In this case, it's the opposite of the forward leg. He'll maintain the stick in contact with the head, spine, and the sacrum, and maintain the stick absolutely straight up and down. While maintaining that position, he'll attempt to lunge forward and place the knee of his left leg behind the heel of his right foot, and return to the start position. If the knee goes to the outside of the board, you'll be corrected, or if the stick moves excessively forward into flexion during the movement, or of course any kind of stumble or fall off the board will be considered a failure. He would be given 3 opportunities and 2 sets of corrections, and then you'll repeat 3 repetitions with the opposite leg, so the right leg on the deck, ensuring to switch hands, and putting the heel of the left leg forward of the 17 mark, or whatever mark that you were given specific to your height. And again, while maintaining head, spine, and sacral contact with the stick and the stick absolutely upright, you'll attempt to touch the knee of the right leg to the heel of the left foot. Again, 3 attempts will be offered, 2 sets of corrections will be given, and finally you'll be asked if you had pain during any of these movements. Station 8, hurdle step. The purpose of the hurdle step is to assess your balance, proprioception, and mobility, stability of the lower quadrant during movement. For this particular case, we take the initial measurement that we found for the inline lunge, where we measured the tib tube to the floor. In this particular case, the participant's measurement was 17, and we would actually place this to mark the individual score of that particular person in order to make it specific to them. So placing the band at 17, the participant will be asked to step up to the back of the FMS kit in bare feet, feet together with their toes touching the actual FMS kit. They will place the stick, the dowel, behind their neck and rest in that position. For the first test, they will move their right leg and maintain their left leg in position, and they will attempt to bring their hip and knee into flexion, stepping over top of the rubber band without touching it, and touching their heel softly to the ground and returning to the start position. They'll be given 3 opportunities with 2 sets of corrections and asked if they had pain during the movement. They will then reproduce the test moving the left leg. An error would be knocking over the FMS kit, touching the rubber band, or doing a circumduction of the hip to try and get the foot over the top. And or not returning to the start position after each attempt, or excessively side bending through the trunk during the movement. Station 9, double leg side plank bridge left. The purpose of the double leg side plank bridge is to measure the strength and endurance of the left hip and core musculature. The participant will adopt a side lying elbow prop position. They'll ensure that the top or right foot is placed in front of the left foot on the mat for support, and ensuring the toe of the rear foot is touching the heel of the front foot. Lifting the hips off the mat and maintain a straight line over the full length of the body. You'll use your elbow and both feet for support, and your uninvolved arm should be placed on the right hip. You're to hold this position for as long as possible. This is a time test up to 180 seconds. You will receive up to 2 corrections during the test. For example, if your lower leg touches the ground, you'll be informed leg, or if you roll and not maintain proper alignment, you will be told trunk or rolling, and a correction will be made. Station 10, lower limb length and active straight leg raise. The purpose of the lower limb length is to personalize your scoring for the lower quadrant YBT test. You'll be asked to lay down on your back, bend both knees, bring your bum up in the air, and drop down boom. And then your monitor will then extend and do a slight tug on your legs to be able to even out your pelvis. They will then use the dowel to measure from your anterior superior iliac spine, the inferior aspect of that, to the inside of your medial malleolus, to the bottom of your medial malleolus, and record the score in order to be applied to your lower quadrant YBT score. Station 10, active straight leg raise. Purpose of the active straight leg raise is to measure your mobility and stability of the lower quadrant and core through a straight leg raise movement. The member is asked to lie on their back with the crease of their knees over top the FMS kit. Their arms are abducted to 30 degrees, palms up, and their feet have to be together during all movements. And when they straighten their knees, you should see that their heels are maintained off the floor and that their toes are always pointing towards the ceiling. They're not allowed to be able to rotate externally during any of the movements themselves. While maintaining the left leg in this static position straight, the participant will then attempt to straighten their right leg as far as they can, maintaining their knee absolutely straight. The monitor will then come and mark the distance or the line between the medial malleolus and the opposite thigh. You'll be given 3 opportunities with the right leg and corrections on 2 occasions. You will then repeat the exercise with the right leg stable and the left leg moving. Common errors with this is not keeping the feet together, allowing the hip to externally rotate either on the down leg or on the moving leg, or not keeping the down leg straight during the movement. And lastly, bending the moving leg. You will also be asked if you had pain during any of these movements. Station 11 consists of 3 tests: trunk stability push-up, rotary stability, and a flexion extension clearance test. The purpose of the trunk stability push-up is to assess your stability around the trunk and shoulders. Participant adopts a prone position, feet together, toes tucked under. Participant slides their hands up and comes back down, placing their thumbs on top of their forehead, thumbs together. They're then allowed to move outward to have their hands in line with their clavicles, and then they straighten their knees, and in one solid movement, in a smooth fashion, they must do a push-up. If the participant is unable to do it in a smooth fashion, in one movement, the participant is given the opportunity to align their thumbs with their eyes, and again move out to in line with the clavicles, straighten the knees, and attempt this test in one smooth movement. In the case of women, they will start with their thumbs at chin level and move out to clavicles, and if they're unable to do it there, they can move to a clavicle level. As part of this station, you'll be asked to do an extension clearance, essentially a cobra position, leaving your hips flat on the floor. You'll be asked to extend your arms and asked if you have pain during this movement. A second part of the clearance is what we refer to as the flexion clearance. You'll be asked to bring your bum back to your heels and your chest down to your knees, and asked if there was any pain during this movement. Station 11, rotary stability and flexion clearance test. The purpose of the rotary stability test is to assess your stability of the core. You assume a 4-point position with the FMS board between your knees and hands. Your knees and hands should be positioned as close to the board as possible. Your hands should be opened as wide as possible with the thumbs touching the board. Now you're going to extend your right arm and right leg, and then attempt to touch the elbow of your right hand to the knee of the right leg. This is an extremely difficult test, and if you're unable to achieve this test type, then you'll be asked to extend your right arm and left leg, and then attempt to touch your elbow to your knee over top of the FMS board, returning to the extended position and then to the start position. 3 opportunities will be given, 2 sets of corrections given, and then you'll be given the opportunity to attempt the hard level of same arm, same leg on the left side. If unable to complete that test level, you'll be given the opportunity to do left arm, right leg, fully extended. Attempt to touch your elbow to knee over top of the board, back to the extended position, and then back to a starting position. You'll then be asked if you had pain during the movement. As a final portion of this test, you will complete a flexion clearance test, where you will place your bum on your heels and your chest on your knees, and be asked if you have any pain with this movement. Station 12, the modified Sorensen, or the low back extensor endurance test. The purpose of this test is to measure the endurance strength of the low back extensors. The participant adopts a face-down position on a manual therapy bed, where they are strapped down with 3 straps, as you can see at the ankles, the knees, and at the pelvis. They are supported with a chair or a stool in a neutral position on their elbows. And to begin the test, the participant touches their hands to their ears, places their elbows out to the side, and the timing begins. This is a time-based test running for a maximum of 180 seconds. The error on this is if you start to drop your shoulders and chest below neutral, you will be corrected and told to maintain a position. You'll receive a maximum of 2 corrections before being disqualified from the test, and your goal is to maintain 180 seconds. You will also be asked if you have pain during the movement. Station 13 consists of 2 tests, the passive lumbar extension and the prone instability test. The purpose of these tests is to see if they provoke pain in the lumbar spine. For the passive lumbar extension, the monitor will grab the ankles of the participant who is lying prone, completely relaxed in that position with the arms by his side on a manual therapy table. While maintaining the knees straight, the monitor will elevate the legs approximately 30 centimeters off the ground with a slight bit of traction, and the monitor will request whether the person has any pain associated with that movement. Station 13, prone instability test. The participant adopts a bent over position over the top of the manual therapy table, grasps the edge of the manual therapy table and brings the legs back so that the knees are straight and the ankles are dorsiflexed with the toes tucked under. This will provide the opportunity for the monitor to be able to do a posterior-anterior pressure on the lumbar vertebrae from lumbar 5 to lumbar level 1. The participant will report whether they have pain at any of those segments during the posterior-anterior pressure. After the completion of those pressures, the participant will lift their legs slightly off the ground, maintaining the knees straight, and the monitor will attempt to do a posterior-anterior pressure at each of the segments previously applied. The intent is to determine whether there's any change in the report of pain with the legs relaxed versus the legs extended. Now that you've completed your 13 stations and all your tests, please take your data collection sheet back to the conference room and give it to our administration staff. You will be emailed a monthly questionnaire as to your low back pain status over the last month. Please ensure that you complete these status updates the expectation is that you will complete them for a 6-month period. So you'll receive 6 one-month follow-ups. We thank you for completing these, as this will help us to link which of the tests would be able to predict that you were going to have issues over the next 6 months, and also how long it took before you actually developed your pain.